All right, folks, here is a Morning Joe segment. Mika Brzezinski had the authors of a new book coming out called White Rural Rage. You can imagine what this must be about. White Rural Rage. This is what you have to watch out for this campaign season, folks, is those white rural voters are angrier than ever. They're more racist than ever. And they are getting ready to vote this year. And so all the libs are going to have this on their book list. Let's take a look what this book is about.
Is it that Trump appeals so much to a group he couldn't be more different from? Joining us now, professor of political science at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Tom Schaller, and journalist and opinion writer Paul Waldman. Their new book, out tomorrow, is entitled White Rural Rage, the threat to American democracy.
Damn it. I'm so sick of these white people.
Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? You would think, as we pointed out, looking at Joe Biden's background and Donald Trump's, that the opposite would be true.
I mean, we lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. First of all, and we show 30 polls and national studies to demonstrate this, so we provide the receipts in Chapter 6. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group. QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism, and scientific skepticism, Obama birthers. Third, anti-democratic sentiments. They don't believe in an independent press, free speech. They're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalists. And fourth, they are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse.
So you mentioned a lot of negative factors about this demographic. Tom, what else do they have in common?
I think that what really matters at
what
this
makes
point
them
in time.
vulnerable?
Oh, well, a lot of that has to do with, as a starting point, the problems that rural America has, which are very real and very profound.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
They have the more problematic education systems. They have poor infrastructure. They've had a lack of economic opportunity. We've seen a lot of manufacturing jobs leave from rural areas. And that kind of left them open to someone like Donald Trump, who would come along and tell them something that was true, that there is a system that has not served them well. And he said—
They're pissed off.
They are pissed off, and they have some reason to be.
Kind of undercutting the premise of your book there for a second, but watch where they go back to. So it's amazing. So he starts out saying, they're the most racist, the most xenophobic, the most anti-gay, the most, what do you say, conspiratorial. Then he says, on the other hand—
They have no rhythm.
Right. They have no rhythm. Right. Exactly. They go on the 1 and the 3. Right. They do the clap on the 1 and the 3.
They think deviled eggs is cuisine.
Yeah, exactly. But then he goes and he says, on the other hand, they do have some legitimate grievances. But watch how he goes back to saying, but actually, those legitimate grievances that they have don't govern their actions or their voting preferences, because here's why.
With both parties, the trouble is that what Donald Trump gave them was not something that was actually going to fix those problems, but was just a kind of a way to channel their rage and anger. And, we've been told for so long, especially Democrats have been told, that in order to get rural voters, to get them to listen to you, you have to go there, you have to really empathize with them, you have to show them that you understand their lives, you have to, put on a Carhartt jacket and go down to somebody's farm.
Have a beer.
And maybe milk a cow.
Yes.
Oh, that's
turned
not
out that none of that was true.
Maybe milk a
When
cow.
Donald Trump came along, he didn't do any of that stuff.
Look at this.
He was just a conduit for their rage, their anger, their resentment. And that turned out to be what they wanted. And it wasn't really about the material conditions of their lives, because he didn't improve their lives, but he got more support in rural areas in 2020 than he had in 2016, despite the fact that none of their problems had gotten any better under him.
Okay, so because
he didn't
they
run
voted
on
for
not
him,
materially improving their lives, and I don't know that that's even true.
well, the whole premise that he's saying here, he's saying, okay, so they are, racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-gay, right? They have some legitimate grievances that they voted for Trump thinking he was going to solve them. But because he didn't solve them in his first term, The fact that they're going to line up and vote for him again proves that they don't really care about those grievances.
Well, you could make that case about Obama.
Exactly. That was my point. You could make the exact same point about the Democratic Party. Well, Joe Biden didn't pass paid family leave or a public option. He said he was going to. He didn't. He didn't raise the minimum wage, even though he said he was going to. So now all the Democrats who line up and vote for Joe Biden this year, is it fair to say they don't care about those things? Is it fair to say, well, they must have been lying when they said that they support paid family leave because Joe Biden didn't give it to them and they're voting for him anyway? That's the logic he's making. These guys have a book deal. These guys have a book deal. This is the level of thinking from people who have a book deal. You can get a book deal if you're as dumb as these two, if you parrot the same talking points that they parrot.
Well, also, this kind of thing makes me fucking ballistic because it is really all this very aristocratic framing. The same exact qualities in the aristocratic class that they are a part of, the cultural elites that they are members of good standing of. Everything they're saying here about white rural voters, you could very easily say about their own class. You're inclined to conspiracy theories. You guys ran around talking about fucking Russiagate for years. Right. For years. This crazy theory with no particular evidence attached to it.
Rachel Maddow's at it again. She's going to say Trump is not going to leave this time when he wins because they're going to prosecute. Right. Yeah.
But they're the ones who are inclined to conspiracy theories. Whenever they frame racism, this comes up too. We're doing it later in the week. Time ran this cover story, The New Anti-Semitism. And one of the lines that really jumped out at me in that is, well, anti-Semitism always comes up when populism rears its head with its us versus them. They just hate the people. They hate democratic processes. They hate and despise popular movements. The best book out there on this is Thomas Frank's last book, The People Know, where he shows they've always done this. They've always cast any kind of popular movement as being ignorant and retrograde. Excuse me, who were the members of all those restrictive country clubs and golf courses, some of which only desegregated in the last couple of decades? Who are those the popular people? That's populists who are racist? Really? So aristocrats, wealthy people have always been known for their tendency to be welcoming and open-minded about people who are not white. Is that what you're saying? The rich have been known for their openness to race mixing and miscegenation, and that they've been at the forefront of being open to that. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, yeah, and that's actually a very important point, because as much as Trump's inroads with the white working class are what propelled him to victory in 2016, that made the difference on the margins, it's also true that generally Trump's voters skewed more PMC than Democratic voters as a whole. Now, that could be a little confusing because the inroads that he made with working class voters are what made those Rust Belt states tight and gave him the chance to win, right? So that was absolutely operational to his victory. But broadly speaking, it's still the small business owner, the sort of petty bourgeois, if you will, who are mostly white, who actually put Trump over the finish line because they tend to vote Republican every time. So it's amazing that the title of this book is not just white rage, because that would encompass the sort of PMC, small business owner, upper middle class, typical Republican voter. No, white rural rage. So they make a specific point to single out the working or working poor or poor white voter as the threat to democracy, not the country club Republicans who vote Republican every time who voted for Trump. They're not the threat. They're not the threat because they are of our class background. No, it's the poor whites who are the threat.
Exactly.
Please clap.